Hi guys, welcome again to my channel. Now today's video is another one shoulder blazer design. Now this is a lot similar to the last video that I posted. So if you want to see how I interpreted this style, please stay tuned. As always, I'm starting out with a basic bodice block. I traced it out on 4 because I'll be needing 2 parts, half side for the sequence dress and then half side for the blazer part of the dress. So first, I'm just going to extend it into a dress block. To get the length of the dress, I measured 35 inches from the neck point down. Next, I marked that point and then took the same measurement from the side of the hip so that I have a straight line. And I added 2 inches at the bottom for the hem. Now here I'm just marking out the hip measurement and then taking that same measurement at the hem level. Next I connected those points. Next I'm going to separate the bodice. Now the bustier part of this dress is going to be a full bodice. Now next I marked my underbust measurement, measuring from the neck point down to the waist dart, which in this case was 38 cm. Now to shape the underbust, I measured 2 cm both ways on each sides of the dart. Now usually I use between 1.5 to 2 cm. I base that on how big the bust is. So usually for smaller bust I'll use 1 to 1.5 cm, and for bigger bust I'll use 2 cm. Now the true bust line tends to always be the fullest part of the bust, so usually that's where I use as my nipple point. Next I mark the depth of the neck, which I measured from the base of the neck down with 6.5 inches. Next I close my darts to allow me to draw the neckline. Now to avoid gaping around the chest area, I'm going to measure 1 cm on the right and 1.5 cm on the left. Next I'm just going to connect that line back to my bust point. Now once I did that, I just redrew the neckline with those new points. Then next I just separated the pattern through the new panel line. I took out about 1 inch from the side of the armhole. So this is the dress part of the design, which will be made with the sequence fabric. Now moving on to the blazer part, I measured the length, which was the same as the length of the dress. After marking the hem, I measured 3 inches on the CF line and then I just drew it down back to the side to form a slant. Next, I shaped the side of the dress with 1 inch to just make it a little pencil at the bottom. Then I drew the slant towards the CF. Now after marking this point, I'm just going to go ahead and cut out my bodice. Now because this side of the bodice is a blazer, I'm going to go ahead and do minor adjustments like I would to an actual blazer. So what I did first of all was I extended the shoulder with 1.5 cm and also raised it with 1.5 cm, which is room for shoulder pads. Next I extended the chest width with 0.5 cm and brought the armhole down by 1.5 cm. Now after marking this point, I'm just going to go ahead and reconnect the new lines. Next I closed the shoulder darts to allow me to draw the new shoulder line, which I connected from the neck points back to the shoulder point, like so. Next I just cut through those new lines. The F line, I added an extra bit of paper to allow for a button wrap. Next I marked 1.5 inch from the CF line, starting from the top all the way down to the bottom for the button wrap. Now next, I connected the tip of the shoulder dart to the waist dart and then the tip of the waist dart down to the bottom to form the panel line. Next, I mark 1.5 cm from the neck point to have a wider neckline. And from the base of the neck, I marked my break line, which was taken about 2 inches above the waistline. Then next, I connected from that point, that's the neck point, down to the break point. Now to draw the collar or the lapel side of the blazer, I'm going to add an extra piece of paper and then fold it along the break line, like so, and flip it to the back. Next, I mark the width of my collar, which was 2.5 inch, and from that point, I marked 3.5 inch down. To draw the curved part of the lapel, I basically just did like a freestyle, based on how wide I wanted it to be, and I just drew that point. Next, I marked from that point back to the CF line and then just did like a little gap in between. Now this is what the collar is looking at. So basically the reason why I flipped the extension back is to see firsthand how wide the collar would be just sitting on this the pattern. Moving to the back, I've traced out 2 pieces for this because it's an asymmetric neckline. So here I'm just extending as usual 2 dress block, marking the length and the hip. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pencil the bottom, taking 1 inch on the sides and on the CB. Then I'm going to just draw like so. Next, I'm going to add my hem allowance, like so. I'm also going to do the same alterations that I did to the blazer side, that is raise the shoulder, extend the shoulder, and also extend the back width. And also bring down the armhole. So next I'm just going to draw my new armhole through those points. Then I'm going to cut the pattern out. So here I've laid out my 2 pieces of the back out. What I'm going to do next is to draw out the neckline. But first I'm just going to tape it in the middle just to hold it in place. I'm going to widen the neck with about 1.5 cm like I did with the front, and then from that point then basically just connect it down to the armhole like so. And once I've cut out the neckline, I'm going to go ahead and also draw the collar cape for the back. So what I did was matched it with the length of the collar in the front and then just draw out the style line. Now the side of the cape stops right before the zip allowance, so I'm going to do like a slight curve right after the zip allowance, which is about 1 inch. Next, I'm going to trace out the cape collar on a different piece of paper. So I've gone ahead to cut both pieces of the collar from the front and from the back. So I'm just going to attach them right at the shoulder line, like so. So this is what it looks like. This is the front, and then this is the back part of the collar. Right. So on the back part of the pattern, I'm just going to extend the dot line to the top and to the bottom to cut those pieces out, or to make the panel lines. So here I'm just labeling each of those pieces. Next, I'm going to separate the front part of the pattern through the dot line. So starting with the bustier part of the pattern, I've gone ahead to fold out all my fabrics, which includes the sequins, the lining, and the underlining for the sequins fabric because it was transparent. So here, I forgot that I had to shape the side to make a pencil, which I went ahead to do already, and then I just went ahead to cut. Next, I cut all the pieces of the back, also folding out all my fabric at once. Now this, I only just needed the fabric, the interfacing, and the lining. Also for the blazer part of the pattern, I laid out my fabric, my interfacing, and the lining as well. And I just cut everything together. So for the collar part of this fabric, the collar, the welt pocket, and the belt will be the same fabric, which is a taffeta fabric I used in this case. Next, I cut 2 pieces each of interfacing. Now at this point, I've gone ahead to iron on all my interfacing on all pieces of the fabric that I cut. Next, I'm just going to pin those pieces together to sew them out with 1/2 inch. So here I've pinned the fabric to fabric, lining to lining. So I'm going to do that to all sides. Also repeating the same for the front part or the blazer part. So for the sequin side, the interfacing was a little bit different. Because I wanted the bust to be a little padded, I wanted to add 1 layer of wadding or fusible fleece interfacing, and then top it up with another layer of the weft interfacing, just to give it that structure to hold up. And next, I just pinned out all the pieces like I did with the other parts. Using 1/2 inch as my seam allowance, I'm going ahead to join the front part of the dress, same as the lining. For more structure on the bustier part of the dress, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of boning to the lining just to hold it up more, because the bustier part is not going to be attached to anything, so there's no shoulder to the bustier part, so you want to make sure it holds up as much as possible. Along the panel lines on the lining, I'm going to use a smaller boning, which is about 1/4 inch, and then use the bigger bonings on the other sides. And next, I'm going to fix in my breast pad. Usually I always take it 1 inch above the underbust line. Next, I'm going to lay the lining over the sequins, pinning it together and sewing 1/2 inch as the seam allowance to face the neck. Next, I'm just going to make just few notches and then also trim a little off the seam allowance on the neck, and then do a top stitch. Next, I turn the armhole in the same way. So this is the finished look of the bustier. Now moving on to the blazer part, I'm just going to go ahead also just sew out my seam with about 1/2 inch and repeat the same on the lining. Next, I'm going to be marking out the points where I'll be placing my Welt pocket. So what I did was I placed a ruler on the waistline, and then from that point I measured 2.5, 1.5 towards the CF, and then about 4.5 towards the side, which in total was about 6 inches width. The length of my Welt was 2 inches and the width was about 3 inches wider than the size of the opening. I also put an extra layer of interfacing along the opening on the back. Next, I'm going to place the welts on the side of the opening like so. Place one at the bottom and then place one right over it. Next, I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch for the seam on the top and on the bottom as well. Next, I'm just going to sew that out and make sure I don't cross that marking. Also do the same for the top. Now folding it like so, I'm going to make a little cut, and then from that little cut I'm just going to carefully cut and then form a little triangle. And I'm going to repeat the same to the other side, carefully. Now next I'm going to push the welts back towards the back of the fabric, or the wrong side of the fabric, like so. Carefully, with my welts sitting just above each other. Next, I'm going to flip it to the back part and then carefully sew out that triangle just at the notched area, like so. carefully make sure it lays out flat, and then carefully sew out that piece of triangle right at the notched area as well. Next, I'm going to give it a good press. Now, because this is not a functional pocket, I'm going to try to close it to like seal it in. So I'm going to cut another piece like slightly wider than the size of the welt, and then flip it over and stitch right on the top seam like so. I'm going to repeat the same for the bottom. Open it out like so, and then make sure it lays flat, then sew out the bottom stitch to just seal it in. So here it is when it's all done. This is how it looks like. We could go ahead and give it another pressing. Now to finish my collar, I'm going to sew from the center to the outer edge. I'm going to repeat the same to the bottom as well. So mark the center and then mark the outer edge. I'm going to be sewing that with 1/2 inch. Same thing to the other side. Mark from the center and then to the outer edge. So I'm going to sew the outer corner first, then top stitch, then I'm just going to turn it to the back and then continue with the 1/2 inch all the way around. Repeat the same here as well. Sew to the center first, make a notch, top stitch, and then flip and continue. Now once both is done, you want to go ahead and give it a good press. I did that off camera. Next, I pin both pieces through the center and then sew that with 1/2 inch. So turning it out, this is what it looks like. Then next, I'm just going to run a stitch along that line, along the brick line, like so. So here's what it looks like all done. Next, now to attach it to the neckline. Now for the back part of the dress, I'm just going to go ahead also join out all my seams with 1/2 inch. Here my seams are all done, all ironed out, and this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to place the shoulder to shoulder and join that with 1/2 inch. Also the same for the lining. Join both linings together by the shoulder, like so. Also sewing that with 1/2 inch. So all shoulder seams are joined and ironed. Now I'm going to place my collar like so. Make sure to notch the shoulder point, which I did on the collar. Now I'm just going to pin it like this through the brick line to secure it. And next I'm going to lay my lining on top like so. Also making sure the shoulders meet. Pinning it all the way to the bottom, like so. So here I'm just going to face that with 1/2 inch, just like this. Now towards the hemline on the CF, you're going to leave about 2.5 inch opening at the bottom, just like this. Now starting from this point, I'm going to top stitch on the lining, like so. Now after the top stitch, you're going to fold your collar forward and then just iron around the neckline away from the collar. Now to finish the hem, I'm going to flip the lining over the front of the fabric like so, and then I'm going to push about 1/2 inch allowance out and then just stitch that with 1/2 inch. And next you can give that a good press. Next I'm going to be sealing all the sides of the dress, like all the edges, the side seam, the hem, the side, everything will be sealed, same as the sequence part. I'm going to seal out all the sides, including the bottom part as well. So here I've sealed out all the parts and then I went ahead to overlock all the edges. So here's how it's looking so far. Next now is to join the sides. So first I placed the blazer side on top of the sequin side, and then I just pinned them side by side, like so. And next I just laid it over the back. So this side I'll be sewing with 1 inch as the seam allowance. Now if you see, the armhole of the sequence is 1/2 inch away from the armhole of the actual fabric. Now for the other side, this is where the zip allowance will be. So next I'm going to mark the length of my zipper, like so. And then just mark my 1 inch allowance and sew that all the way to the bottom. So here I'm just joining out all the seams. This is the side that has the blazer. It was a little thick, so you want to be careful when you sew that part. Next, the side with the zipper. So here, this is it, the seams all done, and this is what my hem allowance will be like. Now at this point, I've ironed out the sides, I've installed my zipper, and I've finished my hem as well. So the next thing to do is to attach the sleeves, and we're pretty much done. So here is my sleeve. I've cut it out, ironed, attached my lining, hem, everything is done. So the next thing I'll just do is sew 1 inch for the side seam, like so, and iron that out. Next, I'm going to check the circumference of my armhole to make sure it matches that of the sleeve. So on the armhole I had about 18.5, so let's check the sleeve to see what we have. So on the sleeves we have 20.5 inch, so that leaves us with about 2 inches. I'm going to run a gather stitch around the crown of the sleeve. Now this will allow me push those excess together in form of gathers. So here I'm just doing slight gathers and just making sure I spread it around the crown as evenly as possible. So here is how it turned out. Next, I'm going to pin the sleeves with both underarm points touching, like so, and then also the center of the shoulder and the center of the sleeves as well. So next, I'm just going to run a stitch carefully around. And yep, all done. This is what it looks like. So at this point you can go ahead and insert your shoulder pads, but basically that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching.